Hello all. So I found some really crazy stuff with this conveyor belt today in Temple. It's the last level in A Machine for Pigs, and this conveyor belt that you stand on in this middle section, it isn't actually an animate object. If you go into inspection mode, you can see that there's no object that you stand on that's actually pushing you forward, even though the little texture below it is moving in a forward direction. But even though this floor that you're standing on isn't mobile, whenever you drop down onto this conveyor belt right here, you are sent forward along with this texture. So I was a bit confused about this, because if the object that I'm standing on isn't what's sending me forward right now, how am I moving without pressing any of these keys down? So what I found out was that if you go into show debug messages, then you jump off this floor right here, there's a little script that runs right here on Conveyor, and while you're on the conveyor belt, the game sets your average speed to be constantly moving forward to this door at the end of the hallway. And it's a pretty complicated script from what I can tell. Whenever you jump onto this thing, it's sending you forward at a constant speed depending on what keys you're pressing, the directional keys. Whenever you're just standing still, not pressing any of these keys, you're moving constantly forward at about 0.8 speed. Whenever you hold W to go forward, you move forward at a constant speed of about 1.4. And the most interesting part is that whenever you hold a backwards direction to try and not get down this conveyor belt, you lose a bit of speed initially for a split second, but then the average speed goes back to about 0.8. So if I hold back, I get that slight speed decrease, but then the script ends up increasing your movement speed while you're holding backwards to compensate for that loss of movement, and it ends up canceling it out, so that whenever you're holding back on this conveyor belt, it increases your speed enough so that you're moving forward at the same speed that you would be moving if you were just standing still, not holding anything. And I found that you can actually abuse this mechanic by just tapping backwards. And every time you tap backwards, you gain a little bit of movement speed forward, because the game compensates by giving you more forward momentum every time you press back to keep you from moving backwards, and it keeps sending you forward. Now, just tapping backwards without tapping forward, or without holding forward at all, doesn't really give you that much of an advantage, other than just holding forward, because you just move forward at about the same speed that you would if you were tapping backwards. But if you alternate holding forward and pressing backwards and time it correctly, then you actually get a decent forward speed whenever you do this. So I'll try and do that now. Fall off the conveyor belt, get out of this stop dampening velocity, and then you alternate between those two keys. Every time you tap backwards, it compensates for that key input, gives you a little bit of forward momentum, and then you ride that forward to get the movement speed that averages around 2.4, 2.5. It varies a little bit, but you can actually move that to move down this conveyor belt super fast. This is mostly just a backup for if you miss the initial boost off of the conveyor belt, because that's still a thing, and that sends you forward at up to 6 movement speed, so that's obviously preferred, but it's really difficult and a pain in the ass, so if you don't get a really good boost, you can switch to that really quick instead of just hanging your head down in shame and holding forward. So yeah, there you have it. You can move forward faster if you just tap back a little bit.